Welcome to the first episode of a new podcast called Navigating, hosted by me, Bertie Russell. I am the managing director of Russell Simpson, a London-based estate agency founded by family and run by family. Through this podcast, I aim to meet and have conversations with people who I respect and admire, aiming to explore their careers and their journeys, learning from them through their successes and their challenges. For the first episode of this podcast, who better to speak to than the founder of Russell Simpson and my dad, Alan Russell. Alan has dedicated his life to his business and to his family. At the ripe old age of 24, he set up Russell Simpson almost 45 years ago. And for 50 years now, he's been at the top of his game, handling some of the most valuable and prestigious homes in London. And it's a great pleasure to welcome him to the podcast today. Thank you for being here.
Hi. Great pleasure.
Can you maybe introduce yourself and just explain how we're all here today?
Well, it's rather a long time ago, it seems, although it's gone like a flash. I was working in Aylesfords as a car cleaner, bottle boy, and messenger. And after a few months, I was asked if I'd like to get into the sales team. I was told if I couldn't sell anything in 6 months, I'd be out. But fortunately, I was there in Chelsea for 2 years in the Chelsea office, and then 1.5 years in Kensington, where I learnt a lot about the houses and the areas, which was a fantastic footing to what I ended up doing, which was leaving Aylesfords when I was just turning 24. And I started the company with somebody called Simpson, who used to work at Aylesfords. And we both put £3,000 in to start the company, which doesn't seem very much now, but I think it was quite a lot. We were given a photocopying machine by Lynn's brother. Fortunately, we've never had a loan in all the time of the 45 years we've had Russell Simpson.
Hopefully I don't mess that up.
What?
Hopefully I don't mess that up.
I'm sure you won't. Basically, I've had the company now for 40 on my own as a shareholder for 42 years.
Amazing.
I found it very interesting, having left a big agency, that, a lot of people followed me, and it was a very different feeling suddenly being on my own. That was at a time when, again, we had one room on Milner Street. We then moved into the garden shed behind the house, where we worked with about 3 or 4 of us, and which was pretty hard work.
What was it like working back then? What was the industry like? It was
very different because we didn't have plans on the brochures.
Floor plans.
We didn't have many photographs.
I suppose it obviously wasn't digital then.
Not at all. So it was very difficult.
And so it was all paper details written out and printed, and posted.
Opened the envelopes every day, and we had to file every single detail, and we did that in box files with price ranges, areas, quantities of bedrooms. So again, we didn't have computers, so that was fairly difficult to deal with.
So what did your desk look like? I can't envisage it.
Well, it's always been untidy. So I think it was very untidy then, but I did have...
Was fax around?
Faxes weren't around, but letters, for example, gave you time to read them and then think about the response you needed to give, rather than this sort of urgent response with a fax machine.
So the market was completely different. I mean, now I mean, I think a lot of people in this generation are completely used to the ideas of Rightmove and obviously email and WhatsApp. But there was, I mean,
It's
I suppose
all digital.
And back then, how would a buyer, if a buyer was coming from, I mean, were your buyers coming from mostly England? Was it mostly domestic, or did you have some Italians and Europeans and Americans?
Well, we actually did have a lot of Italians, and they were the first numbers of buyers that I can remember who were quite shocked that we didn't have floor plans. We didn't know square footage or square meters. So we very quickly got into that, and we made sure we had photographs on our brochures, which we stuck on. So when the mobile phone came in, I actually initially had a system plumbed into my car called AirCall, which was rather like, you'd ring into AirCall, and my number was Silver 127. It was rather like being on a plane, and then you'd have to say over and out or over. And
wow.
And that actually became fantastically useful for us. And then when we did get mobiles, they were about this big, so it was like carrying a sort of suitcase around initially.
I mean, at the moment, everyone is. I mean, the industry is changing massively, and I think technology is playing a huge part in it. So much more focus on marketing, quality imagery, videography, podcasts, and I mean, I knew a little bit about what you just said, but to actually to consider how far the world has come for business and, I suppose, personal life.
Well, it was actually quite fun. It was, every day was frantic, but then it still is today. I mean, we'd have days when we'd have one of our secretaries pulling out all the details, and we'd pile them into agencies, and we'd have to do property checks to see, is this still available? And now we've got a system called LonRes, where we all are fortunate enough to put our properties, if we wish to, unless something's got to be done off market. And you can look at it every morning. You can see what's just been sold, what's under offer. Once something's sold, we've got comparable evidence of what's been sold. So you had to be on your toes 30, 40 years ago.
I don't know if you remember when I was working at Russell Simpson during my sort of summer holidays 20 years ago. That was my job, and I spent my entire
property checking.
I spent the whole week. It would take me all week to call the other agents, find out if their properties are sold, what prices they are.
And a lot of them were either out, because the difficult thing about our business, the vendors who are selling want to be able to get hold of you and speak to you. And you have to be in the office for that, really, probably. Mm. And you're out most of the day. And to actually then have to do all these property checks, I think you needed more, because you haven't got the internet and the systems we've got now. You need more people. So we had to employ more people to do all that sort of thing.
I suppose nowadays, things like Rightmove and LonRes and social media, there's a much easier way for buyers and sellers and landlords and tenants to find us.
Absolutely.
How did it? I imagine there must have been a lot more collaboration with other agents and professionals.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always got on with all the other agents, and we'd ring them and see what they've got if we've got a certain property. And of course, we were also battling against the big boys. And I remember, we had 6 properties on at one stage with Knight Frank, and fortunately we sold 5 of them. And our battle was people who are arriving in London generally get in a taxi if they were looking, and they'd probably go to Hanover Square where they used to be. And the one thing I haven't mentioned to you is, having worked in a shopfront agency in King's Road and then one in Kensington Church Street, the numbers of people that would walk by and walk in and ask for information. And I found when I was in Kensington, someone would walk in with a mink coat on, wanting to look for a property. Everybody in the office would stop doing what they're doing, look at this poor person. And I thought, it's so embarrassing. When I started Russell Simpson in 1979, I decided not to have an office shopfront. And a lot of my friends said, "You are completely mad. How are you going to do the business?" And so actually for 45 years, we've never had an office, we've never had a shop front. I just wanted to be able to ask people to come into our office, come into the boardroom to discuss what they're looking for.
Has the business changed a lot in the last 45 years, and particularly with family all joining?
Now it's changed so dramatically. And now I've got 5 of my children working in the business, which is extraordinary. And it's only now that I'm beginning to realize what an extraordinary thing it is, because we all get along. We've never had any arguments. Bertie's now in charge of, as you are, in charge of the company. And Jake, who's 11 months younger, he runs our Kensington office. Hermione has taken some time out for a holiday, but coming back. And then March is doing our, Leo, sorry, doesn't forget Leo.
So many kids.
He runs our prime department, which is anything over 5 million, and has a number of people working under him. And then Noah, who's our photographer, and he's now running, as you know, 3 other photographers working with him. And initially you came in, and I remember that having done history of art at Leeds, you wanted to become an art dealer. And I thought, well, you could get a job in an art gallery and maybe get a bit bored, because I can't believe that many people come in. And also I said to you, I don't think we've got the money to buy big art and trade. So I thought it was a good idea for you to come into the business. And
it was great. You set me up with meetings with lots of your friends and clients who were in that world, and all of them said, all the same skill sets. You're selling, you're dealing with clients, you're selling assets which you love, and what better place to learn all those skills, and they were completely right. And it's
but it was difficult initially, because to start with, you didn't sell anything, and it was a very difficult time in the market. And then the market got a bit better, and you've since then never stopped. And
so, Dad, have you ever, with all of us kids being in the business, has there ever been a sort of challenge for you having us there? Any sort of difficulties that you've experienced?
No, not at all. It's rather like at home, I'm lucky that I was in a family of 5 and I'm number 4, and there was never any sort of fighting. It's actually amazing to think of, we've all been in together. We did 2 years ago, as you know, we moved our offices, and we moved out of Anderson Street, which we were in for 38 years. And that was a 4-story house, and with departments on every story. And I think, against my wishes probably, I think it was you and Leo saying we really should be on one level. So we moved to Sydney Street, where you now have 2,000 square feet in pretty much one room. So we have an amazing office, and we have, I think, probably nearly 20 people working. Looking back on how we've managed to find the good position for each member of the family was probably COVID, because I was in London and you were all in the country. And fortunately enough, we had a big enough house for you to all have an office. And whilst we were not allowed to work, I think you all started looking at systems in the business and how we could change things even more. And when we came back to the office, I think we came out in the middle of March, came back in June, whenever we were allowed to. And you'd all worked out new systems.
And I suppose it's very much your business, that it's your baby that you started. And I think we're always very conscious that we hugely respect that, and we want to respect that. But how do you feel about us? You've been amazingly generous and easy with us, making these suggestions and these changes. But how's that been? How do you see the company now compared to your sort of vision?
I don't
before?
know what you think, but I think I'm pretty relaxed, and all the ideas you've been coming up with have been fantastic. And I think I rather feel you should just get on with it. I mean, the biggest thing I don't enjoy about the business is computers, because I'm just so useless with them. And suddenly, even this morning, I was trying to respond to somebody and suddenly my email disappeared and I couldn't find it and there was no one there to help me. So that's the only thing. But I mean, I can see the benefit of that, and I'm now less out doing showings, but I think probably I do bring in a huge amount of business. And when I look back at all the properties we've sold, unfortunately, a lot of people have come back to me. So it's really like gold every time we get another instruction, because as long as we handle the property properly and take care of the client and give them a good service, care about how we deal with their property and respect their, the way they want to see the details and the brochure. And I think looking today at the changes of our having a marketing department and our brochures and all the ideas you've come up with is fantastic. I think the magic you've brought to the company is the changes you've made, but also finding the right people, and everybody in our office is just fantastic. And they're all lovely, hardworking, caring people, which is great. And how you've interviewed all those people and found the people to fit into their niche has been unbelievable.
I love interviewing people for work, and I think for me, I think the most important thing is to understand what people really love. What part of their job and life do they love, and typically, if you can ensure that those people are doing what they love, they end up being really, really good at it and focusing really hard at it. So hopefully, we're so lucky. We've got some amazing people.
And unfortunately, along with all of that, we've seemed to have been doing very well with the quantity of properties we've been lucky enough to be instructed on and sold. There are so many things that are coming on the market that we've actually sold twice. One thing we've just sold, we've had on our books in my time 4 times.
Wow.
Like, 38 Cheney Walk, which was always a little bit difficult to sell, but each time we managed to find the right person. It was just, there's a bit of luck involved as well. But we do have...
Everyone feels like a bit of luck.
We have been very lucky, and I think it's all down to energy and hard work, getting the prices right, and understanding the market. Because most of the news we seem to hear in the market, which comes through the press, is 6 months late.
Yeah. You've pretty much never taken a day off in 50 years, and you seem to love what you do. What are the things that you really love about it? What's been that energy to?
Well, I think, I've thought about, could I retire? And my character, and basically I can't sit still. And when I'm at home, I'm always tidying something or making sure everything's sort of immaculate. And I couldn't just let go of it right now, because I feel there's so much I can do to help, giving you shares in the company. And hopefully you can carry this on, with some of my grandchildren joining, hopefully.
Would you like that?
Yeah, it'd be great. I'm not sure they'll want to do it. And the boring thing for poor mum probably is the fact that all we've ever talked about is property, and we're still talking about it on the weekend. And the difficulty I find is beginning to feel quite tired at times. I mean, I was knackered when I had all of you children, because 4 of you turned up and you weren't even 4. So that was exhausting. And I was sort of delirious doing my viewings, trying to sell another property, knowing I've got to probably do the midnight, 2 o'clock feed.
So that's the stage of life I'm at. So I've got 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. Work is mad, home life is mad. Trying to even eat bright and exercise and see your friends is almost an impossibility. how, I mean, almost this is the greatest struggle of my life, is how do you balance all of that? What were you thinking at that stage of life? And what kind of advice can you give someone at that stage, my stage of life, with some hindsight that you've got?
Well, you just have to keep working and make sure somehow you can handle everything like that. But actually, at one stage, I just couldn't settle Leo down because he was crying, and you were helping him with the bottle. But I suppose it's just ingrained into me just to push on.
Yeah.
So I don't know quite what to say.
Does it get less exhausting? Probably not.
I'm sure it does. I think you've got up until the age of your children are 10 to teach them respect and manners and make them nice people, and hopefully they, understand what it's all about.
Yeah, and then it's a challenge because me and a lot of my friends and Jake and all going through the same thing, sort of mid to late 30s, young kids, stage of life where work is intense, and it's a roller coaster.
But it is fun when you've got friends with children and you can at least see your friends. I mean, I think the minute you get married and you start having children, you lose lots of friends, because unless they've got children, because you're in a very different time of your life.
I mean, my first memory, I don't know if you know this, but I think I must have been 4.5, and I was down in the kitchen in London with Mum at felt like midnight. I don't know what time it was, but I'd gone to bed, I'd woken back up, and Mum was breastfeeding Leo and I was bottle feeding Hermione. And I think you must have still been at work. And yeah, I mean, I was 2 months away from turning 4 when Leo was born. So they're 4 under 4. And yeah, I mean, the 3 kids that I've got is enough. I don't know how you managed it. But
And
you and Mum were going backwards and forwards. I mean, you'd come and put us to bed, then you go back to work, and then it was intense.
I'd always go back to work, or normally come home, have something to eat, and then go back to the office just to finish things off and make sure you've done what you've said you're going to do.
I mean, nowadays there's lots of chat there's much more discussion about balance and mental health and work-life balance. I mean, I suppose that wasn't a discussion. Everyone just cracked on and
you just get on with it.
Yeah. Stop complaining. How do you see the industry changing over the next? I mean, we've just celebrated the 45th anniversary. I mean, for my eldest is 5. What do you think is going to happen?
It's going to be for them.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any ideas of what you think it's going to be like? I mean, if 30, 40 years ago you had no computer on your desk, no mobile phone, no email, brochures were done with.
What's AI going to do to it all? That's what I don't really understand, how that all works. Maybe there won't be so many agents, but I'm sure there will be, because some people try and sell on their own, but I don't think they get the best out of it.
But before we finish, is there anything that I mean, for me, I've taken over the role that you've done for 40 or so years in the last year or so. Is there any advice that you would give me? Are there any really memorable challenges that you've had in the last 40 odd years that maybe I could learn from?
I suppose just respecting all the people that are working with us, looking after them and making sure that everybody's happy, and it's never that easy. And we've got nearly 40 people in the company now, so we've grown. Maybe we will grow more. And I think, quite often there are people who are unhappy and one doesn't know about it. And then there's chitter chatter in the background. But I know what you do. I know you talk to all the people working there regularly, so you probably know what's going on.
Try to
keep an eye on the bank balance. Don't buy a flying car for a start.
Well, thank you so much.
Not at all.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dad.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, darling.
A big thank you to Bella Marshall, who has allowed us to host this podcast at her beautiful home. Bella founded her company, Bella's Gone Home. She is an expert in interior design and home staging, and the value that she offers to our clients is incredible.